Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show, where this week we are super excited to have the brand new head football coach of Casteel High School, Coach Joseph Bushman, on the show this week. We're excited to learn from him. Coach has extensive experience at the college level and was just recently named the head football coach at Casteel High School in there in Chandler there. It's our second coach we've had on from the Chandler district, had Coach Ortiz on from Perry High School. So we're excited to have Coach on as well and learn from him. We're going to talk a bunch of different things. But before we get into the topic at hand, I just want to take a moment to remind everybody that the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show is brought to you by School Funder. School Funder, the only online fundraising company in America that lets you keep all of the money your team raises. We've used School Funder twice and kept every penny that we earned, well over $10,000 both times. You wouldn't give away 20% of the wins your team earns, which is what many other companies would take. So why give away 20% of the proceeds that you bring in fundraising? As a head coach myself, I know it's not always our favorite thing to do is the fundraising thing, but it is extremely necessary. And School Funder is the simplest way I have found to bring in a lot of money for your program. So please contact them at School Funder and let them know that the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show sent you, as it helps the show a great deal and helps us grow our audience. And while you're helping us grow our audience, please take a second, like and subscribe the episode, share the show out. We're trying to get to as many coaches as we can on this journey. I know I've really enjoyed getting to learn from various coaches, and so much great information out there, so many good guys that are in the coaching profession. I really feel like we're blessed to get to do what we do. So we're going to get into it with Coach now. So, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. And before we get talking about some football scheme-specific type stuff, why don't you tell us a little bit about your football story?
Yeah, sure, Cody. For starters, that fundraiser sounds pretty good. I'll have to get the info on that, man.
Absolutely.
100% of the proceeds. That's amazing. But I sure appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for football story, yeah, I started coaching actually in college. I was a graduate assistant at Willamette University, which is a Division III school in Salem, Oregon, just south of Portland, and I had an opportunity early to work with a couple of fantastic coaches, Dan Hawkins, who ended up being the head coach there, and then went on to lots of different places, Colorado, UC Davis, and then Bob Gregory, who ended up being the DC at Washington. He's at Stanford now. And so I just really dove in with those guys, and I was kind of undecided whether I wanted to pursue coaching or if I wanted to get into pre-med. And boy, spending 2 years with those guys, man, I felt like that was my passion, was football and working with young people and making a positive difference in their lives. And so I actually got an opportunity. I got offered a teaching job, and so I went and was a assistant coach for 4 years and a teacher. Probably should have stayed with Hawk and Gregory, because who knows where I'd be now, because those were two pretty good guys to ride coattails on. But I chose to go into high school and became a head coach at, I was 26 years old at Central Catholic High School in Portland. Had a great run there. Ended up going to Lake Ridge High School, and then kind of settled in at Clackamas High School, where I spent 13 years. And had a great run there. Was able to win a state championship with my son on the team and a bunch of kids that, I'd kind of coached since they were third, fourth grade. We had this special group, and we wrote it, and ended up winning that in 2017. And then the next year, I kind of always knew I wanted to get back into college, but I was very grounded in Portland and Lewis and Clark College. Jay Losey, fantastic coach, called me and gave me the opportunity to come up and be the offensive coordinator there for a couple years. And I just felt like the timing was right. I wanted to give college a go again. And so I went up there with Jay, was the OC for 2 years, and then the job opened up, and I became the head coach. So I was the head coach there for 3 years, and really had a lot of success. We had kind of last 2 years we had back-to-back winning seasons, which was the first time up there in 30 years, and had some very good recruiting classes. Brought in 40 plus for our last 2 years, and really had the thing rolling. But the more I got into it, the more I felt separated from what I love to do, which is to be around the kids all the time and in the weight room. And I missed calling the offense, and most of my day, a lot of my day really was spent just recruiting behind a screen, and that's just really not what I was wired to do. So Casteel came a-calling. We had a lot of friends and family that had moved into the Queen Creek area. My wife is retiring, and I felt like I'd given college a good go, but that's not where I wanted to be for the next 10, 15 years. I wanted to get back into high school, and the opportunity just presented itself, and we're off and running. I love the community. It reminds me a lot of Clackamas High School, where I was before. I feel like I'm working for some really good people, and my principal and athletic director, Jay and Craig, I feel like we're all on the same page and going in the same direction. And that was really important to me, to have some people who want to do right by kids and want to win football games. So here I am in Arizona.
Coach, I didn't realize I knew I didn't get quite as much research as I normally like. I knew you'd had a lot of college experience. I didn't know you had spent the majority of your career in the high school game and had so much success in Oregon there. Maybe before we get talking about some install stuff and some offensive scheme stuff, what do you see as some of the biggest differences you've seen between the high school and college game?
Oh, sorry, my... There you go. Sorry about that, Cody.
No worries.
Your question, difference between
High school
the college game and the... Yeah, I think at the high school game, the kids, they're at the age where you really can make a positive difference in their lives. Not that you can't collegiately, but so much of the character development, the life skills that you learn, from the age of 14 to 18, they're really kind of those formative years. And I always felt back when I was at Clackamas that I really was able to kind of live out my life mission, which is to try to make a positive difference around the kids that I affect, and it's not that we didn't do that in college, but in college it's definitely more about winning, and not that we don't want to win at Casteel. Obviously we want to do that, but definitely the day-to-day is focused on just the recruiting and the production of wins, and so I think that's the big difference for me. And plus, a lot of times college, the kids, they're more developed, they're more set in their ways. It's not that you can't turn them a bit, but I just feel that age group in high school, man, you can really impact those kids for a lifetime.
Coach, as you're taking over a new program, we've talked about this with a number of different coaches. When you're going about kind of installing your system and talking about those things, you think it's most important that, I don't know if you've had a system that you really feel strongly about, that you feel is versatile enough to adjust to your kids, but do you think it's most important to coach what you know, or wait till you're out of school, see what those guys can do, and then adjust your scheme to that? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Cody. I think, for one, our system is very flexible and versatile. And so what I always try to do every year is, figure out who are your 5 to 8 top playmakers, and then figure out what formations to get in to get your guys the ball and get them in space and let them do their thing. And that varies year to year. When we were my second to last year at Clackamas, we had these amazing tight ends. So we ran a bunch of 2 and 3 tight end sets, and we really got after it in the run game. We were probably 60-70% pass. And then my last year at Clackamas, those guys were all gone. So we were 4 or 5 wide, and we were now 60 to 70% throw the ball. So I really do believe that you've got to cater your system to who you have. And so we kind of hit the ground and we put in our base offense. We really try to be 50-50. And the last 3 years at Lewis and Clark, we were the most balanced offense in the league. We were 51% run one year. We were 51% pass the next year. So I just think that makes you harder to defend. So we kind of put in our base concepts in the spring, and that way we could kind of get a look at who we had. And it's funny you asked me that question, because this morning I was putting in our offensive install for Camp Tontozona, and it's going to look different. We have a couple quarterbacks who are really good athletes, so we're going to start putting in more of our run game. We have a couple tight ends we like, so we're going to start dabbling in our double tight sets. And so, yeah, now that I kind of see what we've got, we're going to kind of cater our system to put our kids in the best chance to be successful.
Coach, when you're putting together your install, there's some air raid guys that are big 3-day installs. We've heard coaches say they kind of put everything in 10 days, 5 days, even 20, we've heard. How many days would you say it takes to put your entire system in, and then do you put the base level and then kind of add elements to it as you go? Or walk us through the install process from a camp perspective and possibly a fall camp as well.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you what we did in the spring. I mean, we have 3 base run schemes. We have inside zone, we have outside zone, and then we have gut, which is our counter scheme. And so the way we did it in the spring, we had 4 weeks. So each week we dedicated to one scheme. So our first week was all inside zone. And then alongside that, all of our RPOs, all of our play actions off of inside zone. They're all supposed to look together, so we kind of pair it that way. And then the second week we did outside zone, and then the third week we did our counter schemes. And then actually the fourth week, we spent the entire week on a bunch of auxiliary runs, red zone package, third down package. When I was in high school the first time, if I were to criticize myself, we spent way too much time on control downs, first and second down calls. And when I got to college, I got to work with some high-level guys, and we put more and more of an emphasis on our third down game and our red zone and our backed up. We got a lot more situational, because that's where a lot of the game is played, So that's something we've tried to take to Casteel, and that's something we'll do up at camp. Like our last 2 practices will all be red zone third down calls.
Love that, Coach. Let me ask you this. I've talked to a lot of guys about RPO stuff, and have you felt your RPOs? I've heard different things from different guys in terms of zone RPOs, gap RPOs. I'd love to know a little bit about how you practice it. I have said on the show a couple times, I'm probably the worst RPO coach in America, and I think for a lot of high school teams without the right trigger man, it can be pretty tough to. You got to have the right quarterback, I'd say. But how do you go about drilling it? Because I think that's the most important thing. You can see a guy drop something in RPO and say you're reading this guy, but how do you go about drilling it?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, we categorize our RPOs, and we're a big RPO team. I'd say over 50% of our first and second down calls are in fact RPOs, and we have pre-snap RPOs and post-snap RPOs. So a lot of our pre-snap RPOs are, if we get the certain look that we want, we're going to throw it out there. If not, we're going to hand it off. It's just all kind of a numbers game. So I think it starts with getting on the chalkboard and drawing it up and making sure the quarterbacks understand, hey, this look we're going to take it, this look we're not. And I think we did a really good job of that this spring. We have some clearly defined rules. You have to give the kids some rules in the pre-snap world so they know where to go with the ball. And then our second category, which we tend to run more, are our post-snap RPOs. And back at Clackamas 5-10 years ago, we tend to key, a certain defender, and based on what that defender did, would dictate whether we would run it or throw it. Got got to college, we saw so much variable defenses, a lot of coverage rotations, and so it didn't get as simple as just reading one guy. And so we've kind of, the term we use now is grass. You know, we key the grass, and it's basically where the receiver is going to end up. Is there anybody in that area? Is he open or not? I mean, let's not overthink this thing, right? And so one of the ways we drill it is we'll have the RPO, we'll have the backs, we'll have the receiver or receivers involved, and me and some of our other guys who know our system will be in the second or on the perimeter, and we'll just mix it up. We'll give them a look where they should hand the ball off, and they hand the ball off, and then we'll give them a look where they should throw it. And so we just kind of alternate. We'll do a 7 to 8 minute period, and we'll just give them all these different looks, and we just read it over and over again. So that's been the best way that I've learned to teach it to the kids.
Coach, what are some of the most common routes you've associated with your RPOs? You have glance, team, snag. What are you guys doing that way?
Yeah, no, off of inside zone, a lot of times we'll have we call it a stick route, so we'll have a hitch route attached to it. A lot of times on outside zone, we'll have a bang post, or we'll have a bender post by a slot. We tag it up a lot of different ways. So against man looks, against pressure looks, we always have an answer. Now we got to be able to beat man. That's the big challenge. I mean, you can run RPOs and they can look good on paper, but if you can't beat one-on-one sometimes, it doesn't serve you well, right? So,
Coach, have you guys, obviously, if you're running some benders and things, I'm assuming you have some where you're reading third-level players. Are you more a second-level team, third-level team, or does that depend on the quarterback as well?
Kind of depends on the quarterback, and the two that we have really picked up things well. One of them, T. Smith, he's a transfer from Hamilton High School. He's going to be a junior. He is very fast twitch and a quick decision maker, so he's perfect for the RPO game. He's also a really good runner. So that obviously, the best quarterbacks we've had have been dual threat guys, and we feel like we can really attack the perimeter with him in the run game. And then our other guy, Gunnar Choi, he doesn't have the arm strength or the ability to run as T does, but boy, he is one smart kid, and he probably understands things better than anybody right now other than me and maybe a couple of our assistant coaches. But he has been outstanding just in making quick decisions.
Coach, you talked about it a little bit here, but how many concepts do you think you can carry both in the run game, pass game, and other thing is, do you have any quick game concepts, or is that all built into your RPO? Because I've heard some teams say that they went back to adding in some quick game because they didn't feel like it got caught enough with the RPO stuff. So talk about that. How many concepts do you think you can carry?
Yeah, I in the run game, I tend to be simpler in that we're gonna run a limited number of schemes. Doing this now for as long as we have, we have certain run plays we like against certain fronts. So I've always erred on, hey, we're gonna be really good at a smaller amount of run concepts, and it doesn't really matter what look you give us. We prepped it, so instead of having this huge run menu and just kind of being average at a bunch of different things, we're going to hang our hat on some run plays, and our technique is going to be very good, and our recognition is going to be very good. We're a little more diversified in the pass game. We tend to carry more plays probably than we should at times. That's something I've fought myself. You always you go to clinics and you watch video and whatnot, and you have all these plays and they all look great, but you're going to get good at what you emphasize, right? So I'm constantly kind of fighting that internal battle a bit that, hey, you know what? I mean, I'd love to do this, but we're not going to move on to this until we have the basics down, if that makes any sense to you. But one thing we've done is we've identified 10 to 15 plays that we think are bread and butter plays, and they are run plays, they are RPOs, they are screens, they are passes, and we've turned them into what we call fast breaks. So anytime we want to go really fast with something that we know really well that is going to be good against just about anything the defense shows, we can call our fast breaks and we can get up and we can roll with them. And we spent a lot of time on those in the spring.
Coach, that gets into an interesting question. Obviously, probably 10, 12 years ago, everything was go, 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 go. Now you see a lot of varying tempos. What would you say tempo-wise? What are you guys looking at? No huddle, fast as you can go. No huddle, check with me. No huddle in between. Varying the tempos. Huddle. How do you guys go about that?
Yeah, well, we're definitely no huddle, and we use a lot of different tempos. So, fast break is our fastest mode of operation. So everything's built into a one-word call. So we can. That's the formation, the motion, the protection, the play. I mean, it's all wrapped into one. So we always can go fast, but our base tempo, we get the call, and a lot of those plays, like they're either RPOs, some of them are checks. We'll check our run game based on a defensive alignment. We can freeze tempo. We can go on two. So we really have it all, as far as our tempos go. But we tend to be always out of the no huddle operation, and we're subbing guys a lot too. I mean, we'll have a heavy package. We'll have we call it a rhino package, which is a double tight end package. Colt, which is our kind of our base alignment, is with the 11 personnel, and then we'll also get into a lightning package where we'll sub out a tight end and go 4 wide. That's kind of our 10 package. So I like that because I think that it creates a lot of roles for guys on the team, and some guys who maybe aren't going to be a starting running back, well, they might end up being our second tight end, or they might end up being our fullback in our heavy set. So it just gives us a way to get more guys on the field and then get more buy-in, just from a team chemistry, camaraderie standpoint.
I love that, Coach. We always talked about on offense, when we had a bunch of different packages, we would have 14 or 15 starters. And I think what you talk about there with buy-in is certainly very important. You alluded to it a little bit, but how many different personnel packages do you typically carry?
We have the 10, we have 11, we have 12, and then our heavy package is actually 2 backs, 3 tight ends. So we kind of got it all. We haven't quite got into empty yet this year. We'll see if we get there. We have been an empty team in the past, but I'd say that's kind of lower on our priority list right now.
Understandably so, but this question here is a little bit on the defensive side of it, and I'll tell you, in being at the 4A level, and you can talk about this from when you were in Oregon or now up with 6A at Casteel High School, different coaches have different perspectives on this. I've heard guys defensively are going to carry 6, 7 coverages. I've heard guys that'll carry 2. I can assuredly tell you at the 4A level, you can carry 2, maybe even 1, and be highly, highly successful. So how many coverages do you carry defensively, and what's the reasoning for it?
Yeah, well, we have an outstanding young defensive coordinator, Ethan Swope, who came over to us from Chandler, and he's amazing, man. He really knows his stuff, and coverages are his baby. And we right now are carrying, I would say 5 to 6 base coverages, but something we're going to do now that we've kind of tried him out in the spring and we can see who we are. We're really going to hang our hat on 1 to 2 base coverages, and then we'll have some change-ups, and that's what I've told him. It's kind of like a baseball pitcher. We don't want to be, have 6 different pitches of all varying effectiveness. We want to have 1 to 2 go-tos that we're really good at, and then mix coverages based to keep teams off balance. Obviously as a offensive coordinator, I was a lot easier to call plays when you walk up there and you know what they're in every time, right? So we're definitely going to have our change ups, but we have to get really good at some of the base things we're going to do.
Coach, when you're putting together a program, this is another one that has been an interesting question that I've enjoyed asking guys and seeing their perspective on it. But when you're putting together a program, what would you say staff member-wise are your most important hires? We've heard a lot of things. We've heard a number of guys mention the freshman head coach. Obviously, strength conditioning has been in there, your O-line coach. When you got the job at Casteel, what was the area you felt like you had to get somebody really, really good hired immediately? Some guys have said opposite of where they're at, if they were an offensive guy, getting a defensive guy, and those different questions. But what are some of the most important spots to fill a staff?
I just think you nailed it with your response. I'm blessed that I'm bringing Coach Renato Felina with me from Oregon. He was my O-line coach at Clackamas, at Lewis and Clark, and so having your line guy, your steady guy who you've been with for years and you're on the same page with is absolutely huge. So he's actually driving his last leg to Arizona as we speak. So it will be great to have him on board. He's very good. I was blessed to meet my first week down there a guy who I just really vibed with well. His name is Jay Sean Sykes, and he was in the administrative world of football, both at Colorado and San Diego State. Director of football operations, and he has a son who's going to be an incoming freshman who's going to be an amazing player for us. And I sat down with him and I said, hey, I'm new. I need help, man. I need to get this thing rolling. And it just timed out really well that he was available and he was wanting to get into coaching, not administrative football, but coaching. And so we made him our associate head coach, and he's really been instrumental in helping me hire the right guys for our staff. I always try to hire great football minds, but more important to me are good character people who are going to do right by the kids and love them up and build them up and sharing my vision of trying to make a positive difference in their lives. And so I've been blessed to hire probably 7 guys now from the Arizona area that I feel are really good fits with what we want to do. Casteel in the past, I believe, has lost some players over the years from the area to other schools. It's a different world down here in Arizona with this open enrollment deal. I mean, when I was at Clackamas, we had Clackamas youth football, and we had our kids from 3rd grade on. They were Clackamas Cavaliers. They weren't going to another school. And here it just seems like it's a crazy world of 8th grade recruiting and transferring, and that's a whole topic. I don't agree with that stuff personally. I wish it was more like Oregon, where you had your guys and you raised them in the community, and those were your dudes. But that being said, I felt like we really needed to hire a freshman coach and a JV coach who was very entwined with youth programs in our area. And so I hired Tim Hullaby, who's going to be our freshman coach, and Steve Volrich, who's going to be our JV coach. And they are also coaching 7th and 8th grade youth teams close by. And so just having those guys on board with what we're trying to do. I know you're not supposed to recruit, but bottom line, we're going to try to create our school as a place where kids not only win, but they have fun and they get treated right. And so hopefully more and more families in our area will want to stay home and be Casteel Colts.
Coach, you talked about what you said there is one of the biggest reasons why I love Prescott and why I'll be up here, because when I was in the Valley, it's very much like that. I'll say here, most kids grow up knowing whether they're going to be a Prescott Badger or a Bradshaw Mountain Bear from the time they're little guys. There is a little bit of stuff in transfer world, but not nearly what it is in the Valley. And I'm interested to hear about what you're talking about in Oregon and where those kids grew up knowing that they were going to be that high school, and I'm not gonna, I'm gonna sound like an old school guy, but I yearn for those days a little bit. But move.
So do I. It's just crazy how what's happening in college. I mean, we dealt with it at Lewis and Clark. You know, the even a Division III school, the transfer portal. You know, and it just makes it hard to develop that camaraderie on a team that you want. And it just seems like more and more in this day and age, there's not that, hey, I'm going to stick it out and I'm going to compete for a position or a role on a team. You know, if I don't like my chances, I'm out. You know, and I just don't think we're really teaching the kids the right values. And I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of times it's parent driven. You know, I was always from the mindset that, hey, man, you want this position, you got to go win it. You know, that's how it works in life. You know, so yeah, I probably sound like an old fuddy duddy, and maybe I am a little bit, but I do hearken for those simpler times.
Well, this is because you have so much experience at both levels. The recruiting game is obviously a big piece of getting those kids there. They want to know they're going to get seen and different things like this. But obviously, with the transfer portal, recruiting at the high school level has really been complicated, and there's no bones about it. I haven't talked to anybody that told me there's not less opportunities for high school kids collegiately because of the transfer portal. But what do you think are things that are going to set your program apart? How do you go about doing that? How do you go about helping your kids in the recruiting process, knowing that with the portal there's going to be less opportunities out there? Absolutely, coach. In terms of getting those guys to the next level, do you feel like some of your connections help in that area, or how do you go about helping those guys in that process? Because that's a question I've heard from guys that are at the high school level are struggling with now, but because there are less chances out there. What is the name of that, out of curiosity, Coach? All right. Well, thank you for that. Definitely like learning stuff like that, because you always want to create opportunities for your kids and help in whatever that may. It may be them wanting to pursue college football. It may be them wanting to be a mechanic or go into the services or whatever. But I think definitely part of our job is helping them be successful in the future in whatever field they want to go into. But talking a little bit about this one, in terms of a game plan, when you're putting together your game plan, how many plays do you go about carrying in a game plan? Not necessarily concepts, because obviously there's going to be different ways to run your inside zone or outside zone or counter or what have you, but heard different things from different guys here. Noel Mazzoni, I remember hearing, talks about, and this guy at Power 4 level was around 35, 40 plays. So how many plays do you go into a game plan with? Always interesting stuff in that question, Coach. Walk me through a little bit. I believe Casteel has 7th and 8th graders on campus, and I know a lot of people have tried to copy kind of the Chandler model with the academies. Walk me through a little bit of how that is in the Chandler district, and maybe some of the advantages of it. Obviously, the fact that you guys have 8th graders as part of your schedule, I think very few coaches I've talked to have had that luxury, and I think that's a huge advantage for you guys and being able to establish those long-term relationships and building a program. I've talked about this a lot going into my 26th year coaching high school football and 12th year at PHS, and I could go be an assistant with no problems. The thing I would have the most trouble giving up is control of the practice plan. I could go coach in any offense, any defense anybody wanted to do. I like control of the practice plan because I have been in those situations where it said 10 minutes for offensive Indy and it turned into 18, 20, 25 or what have you. But so walk us through a little bit of your practice. Are you going to be a 2-platoon team? How do you go about doing that? And take us through a practice with the Casteel Colts. We would love to see it if you can. If not, you can talk us through it. We'll either way would be great. Ooh, frozen. Well, while we're frozen here, we'll talk about some other stuff. Up, I think I lost him. So we will have to maybe get him back in here in just a second. I'm gonna pause it up here. All right, practice planning, coach.
Yeah.
We got you back. So let's take us through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you bet, Cody. So we kind of stole our practice model up at Lewis and Clark from UCLA. Our defensive coordinator Dan Fields had been there for 6 years, and kind of really stole it. It's kind of a Chip Kelly practice plan, and it's an intermix of what we call teach periods with competitive periods. And so we always start with pre-practice. We spend 15 minutes in pre-practice in position groups. Offensively, that is great time. We walk and talk through all of our run fits for the day. We do quarterback center snaps during that time period. It's just a way to kind of preview in a walkthrough setting what we're going to do for the day. Then we do a very short warm-up. We're about a 5-minute warm-up, and then we go right into our first competitive period. So that can be what we call the Mamba drill, which is we stole from Oregon. Kobe Bryant Mamba drill. We go from the 8-yard line, and we do 4 one-on-ones. And you get picked, you get selected, and you're on show in front of the whole team. And so it's wide receiver against corner. It's running back against linebacker on either a route or a pass block. It's O lineman against D lineman, and then we finish with a tight end or slot against a safety. So it's a great way to jumpstart practice on a competitive note. Or we will jump right into what we call a fight to win period. So it'll be offense against defense, 3 downs to get a first down. It might be just 1 2-point conversion. It could be a backed up situation, a red zone situation. And so we're going to start the day with competition. Then we go right into special teams. We have a 5-minute specialist period where we have kickers kicking to returners, punters to punt returners, kicker, snapper, holder. We're going to spend 5 minutes every day on that. And so we get really good at our special team skills because we spend 5 minutes on it every day. Then it's 5 minutes of PAT field goal. That's religion. We're doing that every day. And then we do 10 minutes of whatever special team we want to do for that period. And then we separate O and D. This is the way we're modifying it for high school. And so we'll spend some time, in indie and small group work, but then we get into that teach/competitive back and forth. So, we might do our RPO drill that we just talked about, and then boom, we go right into a run period against our show team defense, which is our scout team defense. And so then we'll break and we'll do routes against air just as an offense, and then boom, we're right into our Skelly period, a competitive period. So we're just back and forth, and we rarely even do 10-minute periods anymore, Cody. I've just found that the kids' attention span this day in age, anytime you get 10 to 15 minutes, man, you start to lose them. And so we're much more about those short bursts of competition followed by a teach. So we tend to keep them fresh and really engaged that way.
I love that.
And then we do a 10-minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Format you got going there with a competitive period, then a learning period. And then that's a really, really cool way to do it, Coach.
Yeah, and we used to be like, like a lot of teams, we'd go do our Indian small group, and then we'd save all of our interaction for the end. And so it just got long and drawn out. And so now we've just found going back and forth, it makes more of a fun, fast-paced practice. We bought this segment timer, so we just plug in our practice plan in the timer, and buzzer goes off with 1 minute to go, which tells you, you got basically one more rep, and then another buzzer goes off, and you run to the next drill. There's no, walking on the field. So the music's also tied to the period. So, whenever we do warm up or competitive periods, we amp that music up, but during special teams and teach, we turn it down so we can actually hear. And that's more for me than anybody.
Coach, that's some high level stuff there. How much was your segment timer? Because I've talked about doing it. I'm old school and I got my stopwatch on all the time. One of the things that the price of the segment timer really caught me off guard.
They're spendy, man. You can get a base level one for $4,000 to $5,000, which is just the segment timer.
Yeah.
But if you want to add the music, we bought the least expensive one. But it's nice, and it was, God, I want to say it was like $18,000.
I want to say that what I looked at, I couldn't get over the price. I had sticker shock.
Yeah. We luckily had some funds left over from our previous coach, Bobby. Thank God he kept some money in that account, so we were able to. That's like the first thing I bought.
Wow. Well, Coach, I can't thank you enough for joining us. I learned a ton, as always. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. And like I said, I know the Casteel Colts are in good hands, and I look forward to watching you continue to build that program. Wish you all the luck in the world, and everybody out there, thank you for joining us. We will see you next week for another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show.